Medical Humanities, the chair is named after Dr. Kothari, who is known as former professor and head Department of Anatomy at G.S.MEDICAL College, but is better known as the soul of G.S.MEDICAL College and Department of Anatomy. And Dr. Kothari would be proud to have what I can describe as Dr. PANDYA as most ethical person. In fact, he is ethics personified, and his knowledge about various aspects of medical field, including medical humanities, we have much to learn. I will gain as much as you will gain after the lecture. I call upon Dr. PANDYA.
Good afternoon. It's a Saturday afternoon, the time when you really look forward to relaxing, and even more so to tomorrow, which is Sunday. A day away from medical college and hospital and studies and time for fun. Actually, what I'm going to talk about is a little bit about fun, not so much about medicine. And there is a feeling which is growing throughout India and in many other countries also, that doctors are a deprived lot. They are deprived of many things. Of course, doctors have many things going for them also. They have a lot of influence, they have a lot of power, they have a lot of money, but they are also a deprived group. What are they deprived of? They are deprived of the joy of what constitutes humanities. Now, what is humanities? This is the statement which has been made by some individuals about the derivation of the word humanities. And humanities is derived from human. Human, humane, to be human, and to enjoy everything that every other human being enjoys. This slide shows you some example of what subjects are included under the broad group of humanities. And you will see at the bottom, in the bottom line, films are included under the humanities. Similarly, humor and cartoons are also part of humanities. But humanities also includes the use of the mind, thinking, and therefore philosophy. The word philosophy is derived from two roots, philos, which means to love, and sophos, which is wisdom. So the word philosophy merely means love of wisdom. And that's a great goal to aim for in any case, to love wisdom, to try and attain wisdom throughout life. You will see that humanities also encompasses art, it encompasses music, it encompasses theatre, and intellectual pursuits like history, literature, and other such subjects. This is not an all-inclusive list. These are just some of the items that are included under the term humanities. And this is what many members of the medical profession are deprived of. They do not have the time for any of these things. This is the complaint that we hear from medical students, from postgraduates, from residents, and of course from senior doctors. We have no time for the humanities. Now, as far as the students are concerned, the difficulty is that starting from, I think, standard 8 in your school, you are pushed to getting 100% marks. And if it is possible, you should get 103 to 104% marks, including marks for sports and for other activities. Now, why are you being pushed You're being pushed because if you get these marks, then you can go to the subject of your choice for your life's work. So if you want to get into medicine and become a doctor, and you want to enter medical college where the competition is fierce, the higher the number of marks, the greater the chance of your getting into a medical college. And there are medical colleges and medical colleges. There is the St. G.S.MEDICAL College on the one hand, and there is the medical college in Ambajogai on the other hand. So if you are willing to travel to a remote place and a small medical college, then you need not get 103% marks, but you still need something like 99 or 98% marks. If you want to get into St. G.S.MEDICAL College, which is today the premier medical college of the city and perhaps the state, then you certainly need 103, 104 would be better, and if it's possible, 105% marks. So there is a rat race, and whether you like it or not, you are pushed into that rat race. So you study in school from whatever time to whatever time, you come home, and your mom barely has time to give you a cup of tea, and then you're off to tuitions. And then you come back from tuitions around God knows what time, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and you're exhausted and you go to sleep. And the next day is the same thing, and the next day is the same thing, and the next day is the same thing. So where is the time for arts? Where is the time for music? Where is the time for theatre? You notice that I've included ethics as one of the items in humanities. What is ethics? Ethics merely means behavior. Good behavior. It is a term which is a social term, it's not a medical term. It is a term which is used for all activities that concern human beings. Therefore, to be an ethical human being means to be a good human being. Now, what does it mean to be a good human being? To be a good human being means to have the interest of others as your prime concern. Not your own interest, but the interest of others. You are willing and wishing that that person who is facing you will have a happy life, will have a good life, will have a pleasant life. As a doctor, the person you face is the patient. And so if you are an ethical doctor, all your activities have only one goal at the center of the focus, and that is the welfare of the patient. Everything that you want to do because it is going to benefit the patient. That is ethics in medicine. As you enter the wards, which I understand you will be doing shortly, you will see a variety of behaviors on the part of doctors, young and old. You will see some doctors who are deeply concerned about their patient. You will see other doctors who are quite cavalier. They just walk past, within about half a minute they have finished discussing what is to be done for the patient, treatment, whatever. You will see the ethical doctor spending time explaining to the patient what is his illness, what is being done to try and get rid of that illness. If tests are required, why are these tests required? If those tests carry some risks, what are the risks? And why is it worth taking the risk in the interest of the greater benefit that we will get from information obtained from those risks? If an operation is to be done, why is that operation necessary? What are the likely risks of that operation? All these things are patiently explained to the patient and to the relatives. The other doctor, who is not as much bothered about ethics, will just come and say, कल आपका ऑपरेशन करने का है, अपेंडिक्स निकालने का है, ये चिट्ठी के ऊपर आपकी सिग्नेचर कर दीजिए. And he walks out. So there you will see this kind of a spectrum of behavior. And it will be up to you to choose which of these you will follow. It is not a very easy choice. It seems like a very easy choice. Obviously, you want to be the good doctor, you want to spend time, you want to explain. But when you go to the outpatients department in the KEM hospital, you will see that in about 3 to 4 hours, you are expected to see something like 60, 80, 100 patients. And then you start wondering, how am I going to spend time explaining things to 80 to 100 patients in 4 hours? How is it possible? The good doctor will say, I will find the time somehow. The other variety will say, look, I can't manage, it's not possible, I have to be very curt and I have to be really abrupt. And if it sounds that I'm being rude, well, that's patient's bad luck. So the choice is not very easy. And when you go into practice, the choice becomes even more difficult. Because if you're an ethical, straightforward doctor, you will find that patients don't come very easily to you in the beginning. It takes time for your reputation as an ethical doctor to make itself known to society. It may take years. So for 6 months, 1 year, 1.5 years, you're sitting in your dispensary or consulting room, twiddling your thumbs, doing nothing. And you're just waiting, and one patient trickles in, the next patient may come day after tomorrow, and so on. But once your reputation is established, as a doctor who cares for patients, as a doctor who's worried, as a doctor who does everything that is possible to help, then things change. But for that, you have to wait. You have to be a patient doctor. And that is difficult. Because you have already spent so many years training to be a doctor. You've already spent so much of your parents' money in becoming a doctor. And now you are being told you have to wait 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, which is not easy. So that is why you have to make a choice, which is not very easy, but it is a choice which is very rewarding if you make the right choice. If you make the wrong choice and you decide that I'm going to go after money and I don't care about patients, you will become rich very soon. Very soon. By the time you are about 45 years old, you're probably rolling around in a Mercedes and you probably have 2 flats which are 3-bedroom facing the sea and so on and so forth. But you may then have to take sleeping pills in order to get sleep. Whereas if you're a good doctor, as soon as you hit the pillow, you're off like a light. So there are rewards and there are difficulties. And the choice is not easy. But the choice is entirely up to you. And you have to make that choice. We are fortunate in India in that we have an ancient heritage. I think you should let him sleep. He's tired. Let him sleep. Good morning. We are lucky in that we have an ancient heritage in India. We have had great physicians and surgeons in the past. And when I mean the past, I don't mean 50 years and 100 years ago. I mean 2,800 years ago. And some people believe, some experts believe that these doctors lived 8,000 years ago. So there's a bit of a dispute. 8,000 versus 2,000, 2,600. But 2,600 is still a long time ago. And we had doctors at that time who were brilliant. I'll give you just 2 names which you may have heard of. One is a physician called Charak and one is a surgeon called Sushruta. We have had similar doctors in other branches. These are doctors who developed the branch of medicine called Ayurveda. There are other doctors who develop other branches of medicine. There is the branch of medicine which we call the Unani branch of medicine. And there have been other experts who have developed those branches. And there are yet other branches which have their own contributors. But I am going to focus on these 2 Indian doctors and what preceded those Indian doctors, that means before 2,600 years ago. Now, in Indian tradition, 4 branches of learning were handed over by the gods to the human beings. And these branches of learning are called the Vedas. And we have 4 of them. The Rig Veda, the Sam Veda, the Yajur-Veda, and the Atharva-Veda. The Atharva-Veda is the part which concerns us because it deals with medicine, health, patients, care of the patients, and so on and so forth. But this quotation is from the Rig Veda. Mark the very first sentence, the description of the doctor. What is the description of the doctor? He doesn't start by saying he's a physician or a surgeon. It starts off by saying a poet. A poet who is a combination of poet, physician and apothecary. Who is an apothecary? An apothecary is a compounder, the man who mixes all the medicines and gives them. Those were the days when pharmaceutical companies didn't exist. So you had to make your own medicines. And the person who made those medicines was called an apothecary. So a physician of that time was expected to be a poet, a physician and an apothecary, all combined into one human being. This person goes around the countryside and he carries with him in a wooden box all kinds of healing herbs, because at that time principally herbs were the method of treating disease. He applies his vocation not without humor. Already we are seeing that in those days they did not expect the doctor to be grim and to be completely morose and to be disappointing and to be demoralizing. They expected the doctor to bring a smile to the face of the patient who was suffering. The doctor was expected to have a sense of humor. And the doctor was expected to be frank and open. Nothing was hidden or to be hidden from the patient. So these were the qualities that were described in the Rig Veda about who should be a doctor. A doctor should be a learned person, a poet. He is an experienced person in his own field. He is a physician. He knows how to make his medicines, so he is an expert on raw materials, their preparation and usage in appropriate illnesses. He possesses a sense of humor, and he is frank and open with patients and relatives. The last is today, unfortunately, probably the most important. The doctor makes no secret that for him, this is the source for earning his bread. So he tells the patient that you will have to pay for my services. But in his own heart and in his own mind, gain is not the primary motive. It is incidental to his profession. He performs his profession, he carries out his profession, he looks after his patients, he treats his patients. But gain is incidental. It is not the primary goal. He doesn't see the patient as a wallet full of money that has to be empty. He sees the patient as somebody who is suffering, who is in pain, who is in sorrow, who is miserable. And his goal is to remove that pain, remove that sorrow, remove that misery, and if possible, cure the illness which has produced all these problems. Now, if this is not the chief goal of the physician, what is the chief goal of the physician? This is what Charak tells us in his book called the Charak Samhita. A Samhita is a compendium. It's a collection of the thoughts and the experiences and the ideas and the teachings and the suggestions of the person. Now, although we have Charak Samhita, we also have Sushruta Samhita. Although these are called Charak and Sushruta Samhita, they are not the works of just one man, not just the work of Charak, just the work of Sushruta. No. They are the work of the school of Charak and the school of Sushruta. So there was Charak and his students and his students and his students, and all of them have collected together all this material to produce this work, which is named after the prime teacher who was Charak or who was Sushruta. And in this teaching that we see in the Charak Samhita, he tells us what is the true goal of a physician. The true goal of the physician is the good all living creatures. Not just the good of your patient, not just the good of mankind, but the good of all living creatures. And that includes plants and trees and flowers and bushes. Imagine the scope that, just imagine their thinking at that time. Okay? And it says that you will try with everything at your command to try and cure the disease that is ailing the patient, which is troubling the patient. So that was the main motive of the physician. Now, if you subscribe to the humanities, if you believe that the humanities are important, and if you find the time and the energy to study the arts, to study literature, to study painting, to listen to music and understand music, what will be your rewards? What happens if you do that? The first, of course, is that your own lives become richer. Can you just imagine spending day after day after day, year after year after year, just thinking about medicine, medical problems, money, finance, and things like that? It's a miserable way to live. If, on the other hand, you can enjoy a good painting, or a nice book, or a lovely piece of music, whether it is Indian music, Western music, classical, filmy music, it doesn't matter. You enjoy it, you like it, you love it. It makes your life that much the richer. It helps us also to deepen our intellect. We don't now remain shallow in our thinking. We are going into the depths. We are reading works by great thinkers. We are reading works by people who have explained various problems of life to us, life and death to us. So our thinking is deepened and we are the richer for that. Many of these humanities make you think about yourself. Ethics, for instance. It constantly makes you ask yourself, am I doing the right thing? Am I taking the right step? So it also helps in that way. And finally, it makes us friendlier as far as the patients are concerned. It inducts into ourselves the quality of empathy. Empathy is not the same as sympathy. Sympathy is I feel sorry for the poor patient. I say, oh God, poor chap, he is so miserable. But empathy is I put myself in the position of the patient. I can feel what he is feeling. And that definitely makes me a much better doctor. A few more words about ethics. If you read modern texts on ethics, most of these are from abroad. Many of them are from America, a couple of them are from England, most of them are from foreign countries. And whatever texts you see in India are all modified versions of foreign texts. So just imagine, we have the heritage of Charak and Sushruta, but we have forgotten those ideals and we are now going to America and to England to learn what is ethics. However, medical ethics today have these as their basic principles. The first principle has got a long word, beneficence, but you can summarize or translate that word into very simple English and say beneficence means to do good. Now, it's very obvious, no? We have to do good, that's why we are here, we should do good. But when you see a doctor who is asking the patient to undergo an operation which is unnecessary, he doesn't really need that operation. But you tell him, no, if you don't get this operation done, you will die. Why does he say this? Because if he does that operation, he gets 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, 1 lakh as his fees. So in order to enrich yourself, you are doing harm to the patient. You are doing unnecessary, certainly you are not doing good to the patient. Sorry, it's still very important. Sorry, I apologize for that. The point number 2 is the other side of the coin. One side of the coin is do good, the other side of the coin is do no harm. And I've already given you an example of how you can do harm to the patient. The third point is to respect what is called the autonomy of the patient. What does it mean, respect the autonomy? Autonomy means I have the right to decide about myself. You will not impose your decision on me. Why is this necessary? Why has this been put into the principles of medical ethics? Up to about 30 or 40 years ago, the behavior of a doctor was like this. The patient will be there, he will examine the patient, he will do whatever test, and then he will tell the patient, operation की ज़रूरत है. तो patient asks, साहब कौन सा ऑपरेशन करना है, किस लिए करना है? ऑपरेशन की ज़रूरत है, बोल दिया ना, डॉक्टर कौन है, तुम है कि हम है? हम आपको बोलते हैं ऑपरेशन की ज़रूरत है, अब ये चिट्ठी है, इसके ऊपर आपकी दस्तखत कर दो. That was what was called paternalistic medicine. The doctor puts himself in the position of the father of the patient, and considering the patient to be an infant, he commands him that this is what has to be done and it will be done. That is now gone. That attitude is not anymore tenable. And patients also, in those days the patient would accept this kind of a statement. Today, they will not accept this kind of a statement. So, you have to spend time explaining to the patient what is necessary, why it is necessary, what are the likely complications, what are the likely expenses, so on, so on, so on. All of which takes time. And many doctors today, of course, claim that they have no time. They are so busy that they have no time for all this. However, if the patient eventually, after all your explanations, decides, I don't want the operation, that decision stands. You can explain to the patient, look, your appendix has burst. The whole abdominal cavity is going to get infected. You may die. But the patient said, I don't want the operation. That decision stands. You cannot overrule it. What you can do is to write on your case paper, I've explained to him this is the problem, I've explained to him these are the consequences of not undergoing the operation, but the patient is firm in his decision that he doesn't want an operation. And then you make the patient write on that paper below this explanation, I have told my doctor, I have instructed him that I do not want an operation. Now, he has burst his appendix, he is getting peritonitis, he refuses an operation. What do? Throw him out on the road? No. You continue to treat him to the best of your abilities, with antibiotics, with drugs, with painkillers, with whatever else. If he is lucky, he may still survive. If he is unlucky, he will die. But you have the satisfaction that you have done your very best for the patient. And this decision was not yours, this decision was the patient's. Even after you had taken the trouble to explain everything to him, this is what he decided. Now, despite all the treatment, if he dies, that's bad luck. You can't help it. The next principle also is a puzzling principle, justice. What is justice? How does justice come into medical practice? How are we supposed to be just? I'll give you an example. You are working in a remote, small town. In that small town, there's a tiny little hospital. That tiny hospital has one little intensive care room with 4 beds. And in that intensive care room with 4 beds, there's only one ventilator. I think all of you know what a ventilator is. It's a machine which makes the patient breathe and the patient unable to breathe on his own. Suddenly, all of a sudden, 2 patients are brought to the casualty of this little hospital. One patient is a brother of the Chief Minister of Maharashtra. The other patient is a beggar who has been picked up from the road and brought there by the police. This beggar has torn clothes, has mud and grime all over him, he's dirty, he's filthy, he's probably got lice in his ear, in his hair, and he is miserable. But when you examine him, you find that he has an illness which, if he is put on the ventilator and given appropriate treatment, he will make a full recovery and he will go home walking. This is one patient. The other patient, who is the Chief Minister's relative, has got cancer of the lung, which has spread to his liver, which has spread to his brain, which has spread to his spine. But he can't breathe because he's got big pleural effusions. He's got large amounts of fluid outside the lungs, which are compressing the lungs, which is a consequence of widespread cancer. And because he is not able to breathe, somebody has told him, go to the hospital and get a ventilator and you can breathe better. Now you have to choose. One ventilator, two patients. Which of these two gets the ventilator? That is where the principle of justice comes in. If you are just, you will give the ventilator to that beggar. If you succumb to political pressures, you will give it to the minister's relative, who in any case is not going to live more than a few days. He's going to die very soon. Unfortunately, a significant number of doctors put in this position will think like this. This guy is a beggar, he's going to die if I don't treat him. Let die. Who's going to worry about him? He's a beggar, he has no relatives, he has nobody. Nobody's going to worry about the fact that he's dead. The Chief Minister's brother, if you refuse the Chief Minister's brother, heavens will fall on me. I will suffer as a consequence. Give it to the Chief Minister's brother. That is unfortunate because it is unethical and it's against the principle of justice. But it takes a strong person to behave in this manner and tell the Chief Minister who has come with his brother, I'm sorry, your patient doesn't have long to live. This patient, if I put him on a ventilator, will recover completely and will go home. I feel that the ventilator is not justified for your patient and I'm going to give it to this. If you are ethical, that is how you will behave. The last is not an ethical principle, but it's a summary of every, after you read, there are many volumes on medical ethics, many volumes. There is one particular volume which has been written by two experts, edited by two experts, which is so thick, it's thicker than Gray's Anatomy, that thick, medical ethics. Okay. If you read all those volumes, everything can be summarized in this one sentence, which is called the Golden Rule. And what is the Golden Rule? The Golden Rule is you will do to the person who is in front of you what you would expect that person to do if the tables were reversed. If you were there and he was in your position, what would you want him to do? You do that for him. If you follow this, you are following every single ethical principle. Okay? For those of you who are interested, there's a journal. This is the only Indian journal on medical ethics. It's about 18 or 19 years old now, and it is flourishing. It is published from Bombay, and the nice thing is that it's available on the internet free of cost. It's open access journal. So any one of you can go to the internet, and I think I've given you the website at the bottom of the slide. Just go on to that website and you can access right from volume 1, number 1 up to the current issue and future issues. I would suggest have a look at it at least. It covers a multitude of topics. Many varieties of topics are being considered. And you may find some of these helpful to you. One of our past students of this medical college and hospital is Dr. Hemant Morpania. He's a radiologist. His specialty is sonography. He practices in Bombay. But I think he's better known as a cartoonist. And I think it's in Bombay Mirror that his cartoon appears every day. So if you read the Bombay Mirror, which is a part of the Times of India publication, you will find every day there is a cartoon by him. He has also drawn many cartoons on medical ethics. He can be very sarcastic, but he drives home a point. This cartoon is many years old, and at that time there is a body called the Medical Council of India. The Medical Council of India is based in Delhi. It's a statutory body created by the Act of Parliament. And this body has been entrusted the task of ensuring that medical education and medical practice in India are of the highest standards. It is this body which has to ensure that. So some years ago, they issued a warning or a law or a dicta which said that pharmaceutical companies will not give doctors anything. This was done because there was a scandalous situation where many doctors approached pharmaceutical companies and got all kinds of goodies for themselves. I know of senior doctors, very senior consultants, who have got first-class airfare, Bombay to New York or whatever, 5-star hotel accommodation, chauffeured limousines wherever they went, all at the cost of the pharmaceutical companies. Many of our Indian conferences, as you become doctors and as you attend medical conferences, you will see this. Many of our medical conferences are held in 5-star hotels. Alcohol flows like water in the evenings at these conferences. Who pays the bills? The pharmaceutical companies. They are not doing charity to doctors by putting all these bills. They get their values worth because these doctors then prescribe the most expensive modern drugs that they make to their patients. And it is because of this nexus of doctors and pharma companies that each one thrives at the expense of the other. Now this is a terrible thing because the cost is not paid by the doctor. The cost is not paid by the pharma company. The cost is paid by the patient. The cost of drugs go on rising. And there are antibiotics today which cost 50,000 rupees a dose and it has to be given 4 times a day. 2 lakhs of rupees per day for one antibiotic. And there are doctors who will cheerfully prescribe this as if they are prescribing toilet paper. So you can imagine who pays the cost. The cost is paid by the patient. And that is why this practice should be banned. And that is what the Medical Council of India did. They banned. But how did they ban it? If a doctor is caught accepting an expensive gift from the pharma company, he will be debarred from practice for 1 month. Then he can practice again. And here is this representative of the pharma company who tells him, you are debarred from practice for 1 month now. What are you worried about? Here's your air ticket, hotel reservations have been made. Have a holiday for 1 month, come back, start your practice again. So this is the kind of problem that is faced when we talk of interactions between doctors and pharmaceutical companies. Recently, the Medical Council of India debarred doctors from receiving any gift of any kind. Within weeks, the Medical Council of India watered down this decision. Okay, you can accept gifts worth 1,000 rupees at a time. It didn't say that you cannot accept 10 gifts per day. It just says you cannot accept gifts more than 1,000 rupees at a time. It had some other qualifications also about restrictions. The Indian Medical Association, which is a powerful association of doctors in India, fought against this decision. And the Medical Council of India said, okay, the associations are not under this rule. The associations can accept whatever gifts the pharmaceutical gives. Only individual doctors are not allowed to accept. Everybody else can accept. So all associations can accept whatever they want. So they have progressively watered down this decision that they made, which was the right decision, under pressure from individual doctors and associations of doctors. Now the power of art. If there is time, and if you are not absolutely bored stiff at the end of this talk, and you don't want to run away from here as fast as possible, I have a small film which I can show you, which is another better, more powerful demonstration of the power of art. But this is an old drawing. Can any of you tell me who drew this? Yes, somebody said, I think that's the right answer. Say it loudly, I'm an old man, I'm getting deaf. Absolutely correct, Leonardo da Vinci. He has been called a genius. And this is one time when that word has been used absolutely correctly. What has he shown? What is this drawing showing us? Come on, you are students of anatomy. This is an anatomical dissection. Yes, it's a drawing of a fetus in utero. Now, how Leonardo da Vinci was not a medical doctor. He was not an anatomist. How did he draw this fantastic drawing of a fetus in the uterus? He drew it because he himself performed anatomical dissections. This was hundreds of years ago. This was at a time when there was no Anatomy Act which allowed unclaimed bodies to be given for dissection. They had to actually steal bodies to dissect. And Leonardo da Vinci dissected human bodies. But he was an artist. Why does he have to dissect? Because he believed that if he understood the structure of man, he could draw it better. His drawings would be more realistic. The muscles, the tendons, the blood vessels would be much more realistic. And that is why he dissected. That is the devotion of an artist to his art. He was willing. Now, if you stole a body for dissection and if you were caught, that's it. You would be strung up on the gallows and hung and left to die. He undertook this dangerous mission to obtain bodies and dissect because that was his devotion to art. We need that kind of devotion for our science. The same kind of devotion. That is what we also need. And you can see the power of his art. Just look at that beautiful drawing. This is not the only drawing. There have been a number of drawings of anatomical specimens. There is a whole book, the anatomical drawings of Leonardo da Vinci. The original drawings are in Windsor Castle. They are in the library which is owned by the Queen of England. And they are in the library of Windsor Castle. The original Leonardo da Vinci anatomical drawings. Now, I really love this painting because it teaches us what it means to be a doctor. What does it mean to be a doctor? What are the qualities that we need of a doctor? If you look right at the bottom, you will see the name of the artist. You will also notice that this painting was made in 1887. So it's an old painting. The original painting hangs at the Tate Gallery in London, and you can see it there. The reason I like this painting is because it shows us all the qualities of a good doctor. What does it show? It shows a baby who is ill, desperately ill. It shows us the doctor who is sitting by the side of the baby, thinking, worrying, wondering. If you look to the right, in the foreground, you will see the mortar and the pestle. in which he has ground some medicines and made some kind of preparation which he has given to this child. You can see that he has been sitting all night. How do you know he has been sitting all night? If you look on the left hand side, you can see a lamp which is there. You can see the misery of the parents, because you can see the father standing in the corner completely morose, and the mother is actually sobbing on the table. How do I say he's sitting all night? Because if you look at the window, you can see the light is just beginning to come through the window. Dawn is breaking. And this doctor has been sitting for hours and hours and hours, worrying about his patient, doing everything that he can about his patient. He is not a doctor who has come, spent 2 minutes by the bedside of the patient, said, okay, do this, and let me know tomorrow morning, and disappear. He has all the time in the world for a patient who is really sick and about whom he is really worried. That is what it means to be a doctor. Here are some details about this doctor. If you go on the internet and just put FILDES, the doctor, you will get this painting. There are several copies of this painting available on the internet which you can download. And if you ask for commentaries on this painting, you will get a whole number of commentaries on this painting by various people. Now we come to the power of language. All of us need to acquire some degree of this power. Why? Because we are dealing with patients and because we are dealing with their relatives. We need to express to them, and unless we express clearly in such a manner that they understand and do not misunderstand, we will fail in our tasks. So we need to acquire this power of language, the power of expression. I'm just giving you two very, very simple examples of the power of language. And both these statements are made in relationship to death. Look at the second sentence of the first quotation. May we so live that we go out of this world smiling, whilst the rest of the world weeps. Isn't that a fantastic statement to make? Isn't that an amazing goal to have? And look at the second sentence also. The art of living well and the art of dying well are the same. Excuse me. There's a serious patient, that's why by taking a good history, a detailed history, by examining the patient thoroughly, and then coming to a diagnosis. You will see, and I'm very sorry that you will see this, I wish you never had the chance to see this, but you will see that there are doctors who will talk to the patients for precisely 2 minutes. I work in the field of neurology. I have to do with diseases of the brain. For me, a history sometimes takes 30 minutes. 30. It takes me 30 minutes just to get a good history. These people spend 2 minutes history. Half a minute on examination. 2.5 minutes. Finished. Their examinations are over. And then they write down a whole list of tests. Do this. Bring the reports and come and see. Sometimes it gets even worse. The patient phones the doctor. Doctor साहब, सर बहुत दर्द कर रहा है. मुझे आपको आकर बताना है. हाँ ठीक है, फौरन आ जाइए. मगर आते हुए आपको सीटी स्कैन मशीन का जो है वहाँ जाकर सीटी स्कैन करवाकर सीटी स्कैन लेकर आइए. He hasn't even seen the patient. And he's already asked for a CT scan. When the patient comes, the CT scan is completely normal. All that is necessary is to check the blood pressure. And you find the blood pressure is 230 by 140 diastolic. You got the cause of the headache. And what did this doctor do? he made that patient spend something like 4,000 to 5,000 rupees on an unnecessary test, which was negative. So this is what is current practice. There is a very famous doctor in America. Some of you may have heard of him. His name is Abraham Verghese. Have you heard of Abraham Verghese? A remarkable doctor. His parents are of Indian origin. He grew up in India and in Ethiopia because that is where his parents went. And he has settled in America. And in America today, he is a very, very respected clinician. And he works at Stanford University teaching clinical medicine, Abraham Verghese. I have a short film by him on how to examine patients. Since you are about to start examining patients in the near future, the film may be of some interest. See what you think. Does what I have discussed, does it make any sense? Or is it all idealistic rubbish? There are many people who say that all this is okay for discussion, this is all right on paper, this is all right on, but in practice it never works. That's what I'm told.
Woman came to an emergency room in a hospital close to where I live, and she was brought in confused. Her blood pressure was an alarming 230 over 170. Within a few minutes she went into cardiac collapse. She was resuscitated, stabilized, whisked over to a CAT scan suite right next to the emergency room because they were concerned about blood clots in the lung. And the CAT scan revealed no blood clots in the lung, but it showed bilateral, visible, palpable breast masses, breast tumors that had metastasized widely all over the body. And the real tragedy was, if you look through her records, she had been seen at 4 or 5 other healthcare institutions in the preceding 2 years. 4 or 5 opportunities to see the breast masses, touch the breast mass, intervene at a much earlier stage than when we saw her. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not an unusual story. Unfortunately, it happens all the time. I joke, but I only half joke, that if you come to one of our hospitals missing a limb, no one will believe you till they get a CAT scan, MRI, or orthopedic consult. I am not a Luddite. I teach at Stanford. I'm a physician practicing with cutting-edge technology, but I'd like to make the case to you in the next 17 minutes that when we shortcut the physical exam and we lean towards ordering tests instead of talking to and examining the patient, we not only overlook simple diagnoses that can be diagnosed at a treatable early stage, but we're losing much more than that. We're losing a ritual. We're losing a ritual that I believe is transformative, transcendent, and is at the heart of the patient-physician relationship. This may actually be heresy to say this at TED, but I'd like to introduce you to the most important innovation, I think, in medicine to come in the next 10 years, and that is the power of the human hand to touch, to comfort, to diagnose, and to bring about treatment. I'd like to introduce you first to this person, whose image you may or may not recognize. This is Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Since we're in Edinburgh, I'm a big fan of Conan Doyle. You might not know that Conan Doyle went to medical school here in Edinburgh, and his character Sherlock Holmes was inspired by Sir Joseph Bell. Joseph Bell was an extraordinary teacher by all accounts. And Conan Doyle, writing about Bell, described the following exchange between Bell and his students. So picture Bell sitting in the outpatient department, students all around him. patients signing up in the emergency room and being registered and being brought in. And a woman comes in with a child, and Conan Doyle describes the following exchange. The woman says, "Good morning." Bell says, "What sort of crossing did you have on the ferry from Burnt Island?" She says, "It was good." And he says, "What did you do with the other child?" She says, "I left him with my sister at Leith." And he says, "And did you take the shortcut down Inverleith Road to get here to the infirmary?" She says, "I did." And he says, "Would you still be working at the linoleum factory?" She says, "I am." And Bell then goes on to explain to the students. He says, "You see, when she said good morning, I picked up her Fife accent, and the nearest ferry crossing from Fife is from Burnt Island, and so she must have taken the ferry over. You notice that the coat she's carrying is too small for the child who is with her, and therefore she started out the journey with 2 children, but dropped one off along the way. You notice the clay on the soles of her feet. Such red clay is not found within 100 miles of Edinburgh, except in the botanical gardens, and therefore she took a shortcut down Inverleith Road to arrive here. And finally, she has a dermatitis on the fingers of her right hand, a dermatitis that is unique to the linoleum factory workers in Burnt Island. And when Bell actually strips the patient, begins to examine the patient, you can only imagine how much more he would discern. And as a teacher of medicine, as a student myself, I was so inspired by that story. But you might not realize that our ability to look into the body in this simple way, using our senses, is quite recent. The picture I'm showing you is of Leopold Ohnbrugger, who in the late 1700s discovered percussion. And the story is that Leopold Ohnbrugger was the son of an innkeeper, and his father used to go down into the basement to tap on the sides of casks of wine to determine how much wine was left and whether to reorder. And so when Ohnbrugger became a physician, he began to do the same thing. He began to tap on the chests of his patients, on their abdomens, and basically everything we know about percussion, which you can think of as an ultrasound of its day. Organ enlargement, fluid around the heart, fluid in the lungs, abdominal changes, all of this he described in this wonderful manuscript, Inventum Novum, New Invention, which would have disappeared into obscurity except for the fact that this physician, Corvisart, a famous French physician, famous only because he was physician to this gentleman, Corvisart repopularized and reintroduced the work, and it was followed a year or two later by Laennec discovering the stethoscope. Laennec, it is said, was walking in the streets of Paris and saw 2 children playing with a stick. One was scratching at the end of the stick, another child listened at the other end, and Laennec thought this would be a wonderful way to listen to the chest or listen to the abdomen using what he called the cylinder. Later he renamed it the stethoscope, and that is how stethoscope and auscultation was born. So within a few years, in the late 1800s, early 1900s, all of a sudden, the barber surgeon had given way to the physician who was trying to make a diagnosis. If you recall, prior to that time, no matter what ailed you, you went to see the barber surgeon who wound up cupping you, bleeding you, purging you, and oh yes, if you wanted, he would give you a haircut, short on the sides, long on the back, and pull your tooth while he was at it. He made no attempt at diagnosis. In fact, some of you might well know that the barber pole, the red and white stripes, represent the bloody bandages of the barber surgeon, and the receptacles on either end represent the pots in which the blood was collected. But the arrival of auscultation and percussion represented a sea change, a moment when physicians were beginning to look inside the body. And this particular painting, I think, represents the pinnacle, the peak of that clinical era. This is a very famous painting, The Doctor by Luke Fields. Luke Fields was commissioned to paint this by Tate, who then established the Tate Gallery. And Tate asked Fields to paint a painting of social importance. And it's interesting that Fields picked this topic. Fields' oldest son, Philip, died at the age of 9 on Christmas Eve after a brief illness. And Fields was so taken by the physician who held vigil at the bedside for 2-3 nights that he decided that he would try and depict the physician in our time, almost a tribute to this physician, and hence the painting, The Doctor. Very famous painting. It's been on calendars, postage stamps in many different countries. I've often wondered what would Fields have done had he been asked to paint this painting in the modern era, in the year 2011? Would he have substituted a computer screen for where he had the patient? I've gotten into some trouble in Silicon Valley for saying that the patient in the bed has almost become an icon for the real patient who's in the computer. I've actually coined a term for that entity in the computer. I call it the eye patient. The eye patient is getting wonderful care all across America. The real patient often wonders, where is everyone? When are they going to come by and explain things to me? Who's in charge? There's a real disjunction between the patient's perception and our own perception as physicians of the best medical care. I want to show you a picture of what rounds looked like when I was in training. The focus was around the patient. We went from bed to bed. The attending physician was in charge. Too often these days, rounds looks very much like this, where the discussion is taking place in a room far away from the patient. The discussion is all about images on the computer, data, and the one critical piece missing is that of the patient. Now, I've been influenced in this thinking by two anecdotes that I want to share with you. One had to do with a friend of mine who had a breast cancer, had a small breast cancer detected, had her lumpectomy in the town in which I lived. This was when I was in Texas. And she then spent a lot of time researching to find the best cancer center in the world to get her subsequent care. And she found the place and decided to go there, went there, and which is why I was surprised a few months later to see her back in our own town getting her subsequent care with her private oncologist. And I pressed her, I asked her, why did you come back and get your care here? And she was reluctant to tell me. She said, the cancer center was wonderful. It had a, beautiful facility, giant atrium, valet parking, a piano that played itself, a concierge that took you around from here to there. But, she said, they did not touch my breast. Now, you and I could argue that they probably did not need to touch her breast. They had her scanned inside out. They understood her breast cancer at the molecular level. They had no need to touch her breast. But to her, it mattered deeply. It was enough for her to make the decision to get her subsequent care with her private oncologist, who every time she went, examined both breasts, including the axillary tail, examined her axilla carefully, examined her cervical region, her inguinal region, did a thorough exam, and to her that spoke of a kind of attentiveness that she needed. I was very influenced by that anecdote. I was also influenced by another experience that I had. Again, when I was in Texas before I moved to Stanford, I had a reputation as being interested in patients with chronic fatigue. This is not a reputation you would wish on your worst enemy. I say that because these are difficult patients. They have often been rejected by their families, have had bad experiences with medical care, and they come to you fully prepared for you to join the long list of people who's about to disappoint them. And I learned very early on with my first patient that I could not do justice to this very complicated patient with all the records they were bringing in a new patient visit of 45 minutes. There is just no way. And if I tried, I would disappoint them. And so I hit on this method where I invited the patient to tell me the story for their entire first visit, and I tried not to interrupt them. We know that the average American physician interrupts their patient in 14 seconds. And if I ever get to heaven, it will be because I held my peace for 45 minutes and did not interrupt my patient. I then scheduled the physical exam for 2 weeks hence. And when the patient came for the physical, I was able to do a thorough physical because I had nothing else to do. I like to think that I do a thorough physical exam. But because the whole visit was now about the physical, I could do an extraordinarily thorough exam. And I remember my very first patient in that series continued to tell me more history during what was meant to be the physical exam visit. And I began my ritual. I always begin with the pulse, then I examine the hands, then I look at the nail beds, then I slide my finger up to the epitrochlear node, and I was into my ritual. And when my ritual began, this very voluble patient began to quiet down. And I remember having a very eerie sense that the patient and I had slipped back into a primitive ritual in which I had a role and the patient had a role. And when I was done, the patient said to me with some awe, "I have never been examined like this before." Now, if that were true, it's a true condemnation of our healthcare system because they had been seen in other places. I then proceeded to tell the patient, once the patient was dressed, the standard things that the person must have heard in other institutions, which is, this is not in your head, this is real. The good news, it's not cancer, it's not tuberculosis, it's not coccidiomycosis or some obscure fungal infection. The bad news is we don't know exactly what's causing this, but here's what you should do, or here's what we should do. And I would lay out all the standard treatment options that the patient had heard elsewhere. And I always felt that if my patient gave up the quest for the magic doctrine, the magic treatment, and began with me on a course towards wellness, it was because I had earned the right to tell them these things by virtue of the examination. Something of importance had transpired in the exchange. I took this to my colleagues at Stanford in anthropology and told them the same story. And they immediately said to me, "Well, you are describing a classic ritual." And they helped me understand that rituals are all about transformation. We marry, for example, with great pomp and ceremony and expense to signal our departure from a life of solitude, misery, loneliness to one of eternal bliss. I'm not sure why you're laughing. That was the original intent, was it not? We signal transitions of power with rituals. We signal the passage of a life with rituals. Rituals are terribly important. They're all about transformation. Well, I would submit to you that the ritual of one individual coming to another and telling them things that they would not tell their preacher or rabbi, and then incredibly on top of that, disrobing and allowing touch, I would submit to you that that is a ritual of exceeding importance. And if you shortchange that ritual by not undressing the patient, by listening with your stethoscope on top of the nightgown, by not doing a complete exam, you have bypassed on the opportunity to seal the patient-physician relationship. I am a writer, and I want to close by reading you a short passage that I wrote that has to do very much with this scene. I'm an infectious disease physician, and in the early days of HIV, before we had our medications, I presided over so many scenes like this. I remember every time I went to a patient's deathbed, whether in the hospital or at home, I remember my sense of failure. The feeling of I don't know what I have to say, I don't know what I can say, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And out of that sense of failure, I remember I would always examine the patient. I would pull down the eyelid, I would look at the tongue, I would percuss the chest, I would listen to the heart, I would feel the abdomen. I remember so many patients, their names still vivid on my tongue, their faces still so clear. I remember so many huge, hollowed out, haunted eyes staring up at me as I performed this ritual. And then the next day, I would come and I would do it again. And I wanted to read you this one closing passage about one patient. I recall one patient who was at that point no more than a skeleton encased in shrinking skin, unable to speak, his mouth crusted with candida that was resistant to the usual medications. When he saw me on what turned out to be his last hours on this earth, his hands moved as if in slow motion, and as I wondered what he was up to, his stick fingers made their way up to his pajama shirt, fumbling with his buttons. I realized that he was wanting to expose his wicker basket chest to me. It was an offering, an invitation. I did not decline. I percussed, I palpated, I listened to the chest. I think he surely must have known by then that it was vital for me just as it was necessary for him. Neither of us could skip this ritual, which had nothing to do with detecting rales in the lung or finding the gallop rhythm of heart failure. No, this ritual was about the one message that physicians have needed to convey to their patients. Although God knows of late in our hubris, we seem to have drifted away. We seem to have forgotten. As if with the explosion of knowledge, the whole human genome mapped out at our feet, we are lulled into inattention, forgetting that the ritual is cathartic to the physician, necessary for the patient. Forgetting that the ritual has meaning and a singular message to convey to the patient. And the message, which I didn't fully understand then, even as I delivered it, and which I understand better now, is this: I will always, always, always be there. I will see you through this. I will never abandon you. I will be with you through the end. Thank you very much.
But I would strongly urge you to read his earlier 3 books. We are, I think, extremely lucky in that we have about 4 extremely good physicians of Indian origin in America today who are reputed throughout the world for the books that they have written on their experience. Abraham Verghese is one of them. The last one of them that I know of is a man called Paul Kalanithi. Have any of you ever heard of Paul Kalanithi? I have a short film on Paul Kalanithi. Are you interested in watching it? Yes.
Paul was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer in May of 2013. He was working at the time as a neurosurgery resident.
And I began to have some of the classic symptoms of a cancer patient.
Something was going wrong. He was starting to have a lot of back pain, and he was starting to lose weight, much more than would ever be usual. And both of us were pretty worried.
My wife and I, who's also a physician, knew something was wrong. And I checked myself into the hospital and had a big workup and found out I had lung cancer, which was a big surprise.
Obviously, that was a huge, huge shock to everybody.
When you think about a young person with cancer, especially a non-smoker, you're thinking about lymphoma, testicular, melanoma.
I don't understand the smoking stigma anyway. I mean, if you... And that's actually the same way that I've always felt about lung cancer as a doctor and as a person in the world.
And when the diagnosis came back as lung cancer, we were completely shocked.
Paul got diagnosed with cancer in 2013, and our daughter was born on the 4th of July of 2014. And she's kind of an example of, just because you have cancer doesn't mean you stop trying to achieve your goals and stop trying to grow your family or all of those things that are important to you. So I think she's the very best example of living your life the way you want to, even though you have cancer.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say about it, except, I could sit and hold that girl all day long. And I couldn't be happier.
We learned about Team Draft because ultimately Chris invited us to represent Team Draft at a couple games. And it's just been so fantastic. I love what they do to raise awareness of lung cancer, and B, just kind of get people out and help them kind of celebrate what's most valuable to them, which is being with their family and friends, being out in the world, doing something positive. And then on top of that, raising awareness for such a good cause. So it feels amazing. And the kind of love and community that comes out of Team Draft is really spectacular and important.
We are a very supportive Team Draft, but once you saw the contest and saw that we could come to Tish the NFL and Super Bowl on her birthday, there was nothing that was going to stop her from winning the competition.
It's a contest where people who are lung cancer survivors, meaning people who have lung cancer, can enter. and they need to create a fundraising website and then circulate it among their family and friends. And there's a spot where you can write in your own story and where you can put up pictures. And so we wrote kind of a short thing about why we wanted to win it and what this has meant to us, and we just got a lot of donations on that site. So this is the first time that Team Draft has done the Super Bowl Challenge, and I really wanted to win it, and so I posted it on Facebook. And then what happened was a lot of our family and friends started reposting it and sending it around, and so it just kind of started spreading among people who knew about Team Draft, who knew what a big fan of football Paul was, and who knew what a great cause this was, and it just kind of took off. And I actually had to keep raising the goal. So initially I set a fundraising goal, and we got so close to it that I raised it. And so it just felt amazing to keep raising it. And I'm thrilled that we raised that money for Team Draft. We're in Arizona. We're here for Super Bowl 49. It's crazy. Yesterday we were in the locker rooms down on the field. I can't even believe they let us go on the field. We took our baby, we put her on the grass. It was just incredible. I felt like we were celebrities this whole week, and we haven't even been yet.
We already left our kids, we left it over in the park construction. And everyone just have a great time. But it's just awesome. All the people, all the people that supported, all the people that donated. Thank you guys for the support. I really believe in the Super Bowl Challenge, and knowing that when we win this fight, we have to celebrate the love. Folks that are willing to stand up, our survivors, advocates. They didn't agree with you. And then we have to realize this is about life. Research doesn't matter. None of this matters unless we're talking about life.
That was speaking until the last 30 seconds, the last one card. It was a great game to watch it there.
When you have a terminal illness, you end up making a decision about whether you're going to be living or whether you're going to be dying. And you realize every day you wake up, you're alive. And, even if you're dying, until the day you're actually dying, you're actually alive. And you get to go on doing all the things that matter to you and that give meaning to your life.
Paul Kalanidhi was in training to become a neurosurgeon. He had started performing independent major operations in the brain and the spine. He was much respected by his colleagues and more importantly by his teachers and by his chiefs in the clinical units. And when he started getting these symptoms of tiredness and exhaustion and some other problems, initially he poo-pooed them. He said, oh, this is just overwork. As a resident, you have to work so hard, so it's just because of overwork. But when it didn't disappear, then he got himself investigated. There is a book which his wife has published after he died. That book is called When Breath as in breathing, when breath turns into air. When you die, there is no more breath, so that breath has turned into air. This is from a poem. This book has been published and is available in Bombay today. I would strongly urge you to try and get a copy, borrow it if necessary, read it. It's an extraordinary book. It describes his entire illness right from the beginning. It describes his emotions, his wife's emotions, the problems that they face, And it comes right up to the evening or the day before his death. And then his wife continues and describes how he actually died. It's an amazing book. The manner in which this man deals with his illness and with his oncoming death, which was very obvious to him, is salutary. The courage which he displays. The foreword to this book is written by Abraham Verghese, whom we just saw. They both worked in the same institute in Stanford. He was also from Stanford. So I would very strongly recommend try and get a copy of this book. When Death Turns to Air. When you go home and you open your computer, just type Paul Calamity. You will get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hits. Go to his essays in the New York Times, which are freely available. They are open, anyone can access them. They will give you an inkling of what is in the book. It's like getting a feel of what is in the book. The book is much more than all these kind of accounts which are there. So, I told you right in the beginning that we need to be interested in the humanities. We need to be interested in literature. This is literature. It's a book. But what an extraordinary book, and what an impact it has on everyone who has read this book. Amazing impact. I'll tell you about one more doctor and then I'll stop. This doctor's name was Oliver Sacks, S-A-C-K-S. How many of you have heard of him or read his books or seen his films? Come on, somebody. Oliver Sacks. Nobody? I'm surprised. Oliver Sacks was a neurophysician of British origin. He was born and brought up in England, and then he migrated to America. And because he couldn't get a job, he joined a hospital which was meant for incurable patients. This was a hospital where patients were dumped and forgotten because they are incurable. Nothing can be done for them. What's the use of wasting time and energy on such patients? So they'd be dumped there and they were forgotten. There were doctors who were appointed to that hospital, and these doctors would come, do a round in a short period of time and go away. Because these are incurable patients, nothing can be done. And then Oliver Sacks was appointed to this hospital. And he started studying those patients, one by one by one. Detailed history, detailed clinical examination, detailed notes. And he came across a group of patients who had Parkinson's disease. And at that time, there was no treatment for Parkinson's disease. So these patients were rigid, their faces were expressionless, some of them had tremors of the pill-rolling type, and they were frozen in body. And along came L-Dopa. L-Dopa is a drug which is used for the treatment of Parkinson's disease. He begged and he borrowed and he got a small amount of L-Dopa, which he used on one patient. And a miracle occurred, an absolute miracle. This frozen man woke up, started sitting, started talking, started walking, and could independently go out of the hospital and come back to the hospital. A real miracle. But the supply of L-Dopa was limited. And after that supply was exhausted, he couldn't do anything more. And the patient froze again. And he made this story of this one patient into a book, which he called Awakening. A frozen man woke up and then went back to sleep. And this was made into a film, also called Awakenings. And the doctor is played by an actor called Robin Williams. You've heard of Robin Williams? A great actor. Horrible, but still great. made a number of beautiful films. One of those films is called Patch Adams, which we showed about 2 weeks ago in one of the auditoriums on the top floor over here. Try and get any film that you can get by Robin Williams and have a look at it. Particularly try and get Awakenings, an amazing film. This man, Oliver Sacks, has written a number of books, about 10 or 15 books. Each book is thought-provoking because he goes into an illness in depth and he studies that illness. Just as Abraham Wise asked to study. One of these books has a very interesting title. The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. So this man thought his wife was a hat and he actually tried to unscrew the head and put it on his head. It gives you an idea of what this man, Oliver Sacks, wrote about. Superb books, every one of them. Oliver Sacks. His last book is like Paul Kalaniji's book, When Breath Turns to Air. It is a description of his own death from advanced cancer. You would think that these books are depressing. When Breath Turns to Air, Oliver Sacks' last book, but they're not. They are inspiring. They show us what it means to have courage, what it means to face death, not as someone who is to be feared, but as someone who is to be welcomed. It's my time to die. Well, that's fine. It's time to die. So try and look at these books at least. And I'm leaving you with these two names, Oliver Sacks and Paul Kalanithi. And of course you have also got Abraham Verghese, 3 books, perhaps 4. And there are others, more and more and more. And as you go into these books, you will find your own lives getting richer. You will find yourself getting stronger. And what is even more important, you will become better doctors, inspired doctors. Thank you.
Dr. S.K. Pandya has been addressing our first MBBS students in the last century, in the 90s, almost regularly every year. A talk for about an hour and a half, maximally 2, on history of anatomy. Beautiful sessions. I have listened to them n number of times and every time go back with better perspectives. I recall March 12th, 1993. If I'm not mistaken, it was Friday. I might be wrong on that. Sir was talking here. And we could hear blasts at Prabhadevi in this place. Bomb blast, possibly about of 1993. So the talk was on here, and while the session was on, there was an interruption, just to keep us informed about this happening. And then the talk went on for the complete duration, and after that we were trying to work out for the safety of all the students reaching back home without difficulties. Anyways, that moment I got to know that on 12th March you're speaking, I just rechecked all the data, and okay, so I can't forget that. And so you projected a slide on humanities right at the onset. Of all factors, many things which would come in this. And the day we had the talk in MLT, when you had been awarded the chair, based on all the talks which were there on that day, and then subsequently for the 90 years of the institution we had a meeting. So we were discussing whether we could acronymize humanities, the word humanities, taking care of some of these things put in. So H would go for history. which is very much a component. We will start with history. U for universality of oneness of all of us. We are different, but yet, if I believe that I am the patient believes he sees me in him and vice versa. So then that's oneness, that part, universality. M obviously would be for morals. Very much a component of, which is lacking for the day. Art is what's listed in various heads, films, music. And for nurturing and nature. You have nurtured all the students with all your experience, and I guess definitely somewhere down the line they will recall this date later in their career. I for innovation. We have a lot of past data, but each brain, I guess you'll agree with me that is individualistic and has something unique. All the names that you quoted, examples. Unique things, definitely, for sure. So being innovative. Tolerance is a word very much now in discussion. So maybe patient tolerating a doctor, doctor tolerating a patient. I for initiative. Like I may have the inclination to do something, but I may not be able to start off. So initiatives towards various, like this would be an initiative towards kindness towards the person they are treating. And obviously E and S are the ones, E for ethics and S for spirituality, which all of us are concerned. Of course, this doesn't cover the entire spectrum, but in case I have to work out some guidelines, this may be, I thought, more appropriate. So, as a token of respect from our side, all students, on behalf of students and the institution, I have just picked up a small token from our nostalgia, which is a card holder with the emblem of GS in it. So please accept that, Dr. M.V.L.Kothari. Daman Doctor, would you like to speak a little bit?
Hello. Good afternoon, sir, everybody. Really, Dr. Natarajan has already enumerated what he wanted to say about humanity. Sir has already explained about the morality, the ethics involved into this. Only thing is, nowadays I see that these people are only, they are exam oriented, sir. They are bunking their classes, clinics. We used to have, I remember. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah, yes, standing ovation. Thank you.